Hey everybody, it's Sam Amico. How are you? Happy Thursday. We've got a lot going on today, so I'm going to have like a little bit of a shorter show. At least that's what I'm saying right now. You know me. If you've watched this show any length of time, you know I have trouble shutting up at some point, and that's probably where we are today. But there's a couple of big things, obviously. We have the Cleveland Cavaliers, game three, right, in Orlando, which I'm not going to talk about too much because I always hope that if you can't watch the show live, that you are able to catch up with it later. And, I don't want to be talking about something that's past tense. Should you be able to watch the 330 to go Hoops Wire NBA variety show on Friday or Saturday. So I'm going to address a couple other topics, but I'll go real fast on the Cavaliers. I think they're going to win the series in 4 or 5. So that kind of gives me some wiggle room if you are watching this and they lose game three. That way I don't look so bad. So I'll say 4 or 5. But other than that, I think the biggest story of this series that other than because the first 2 games were, good news for Cavs, but kind of lame in the sense that they were never threatened. Just Orlando hadn't put up much of a fight. So I know sports fans, I'm one of them, even though, I work in the media, so to speak. I could go on for 10 minutes about that. But anyway, I know that we like to find things to complain about. And this was justified because game 2, which of course I'm talking about Bally Sports, game 2 was on Bally's and NBA TV. And it was blacked out for a lot of people who watch on streaming services, which is the majority of us, right? I know that I got a lot of comments and a lot of, check out the emails, a lot of Facebook comments, stuff on Twitter, that people were just upset because they could not watch the game. Fortunately, I have NBA League Pass, so I was able to watch it on League Pass through NBA TV. So the big issue here is that some of these Cavs home games aren't being carried by Bally's when they're also on NBA TV, and they're totally blacked out for most streaming services. YouTube TV, Hulu TV. I'm not sure the rest. I think Fubo may carry them. I'm not sure, but this is, to me, it's annoying. And for the Cavs, YouTube TV, which is what I usually use. I have a couple of the streaming services, but YouTube TV is the live TV that I watch. I haven't been able to watch a Cavs game on there in like 3 years, right? It's been 2 or 3 years anyway, at least this season and the season before that. And I think the season before that, you cannot get Bally Sports on YouTube TV for 3 years. Normally these things last, like these negotiations and these issues between provider and the network, which the provider in this case would be YouTube TV or Hulu TV, and the network, which would be Bally's. Usually they come to agreement, right? Like after like a month or 2. This has been going on now where they just stop having talks. It's not even possible for it to change, it seems like. So, and Bally Sports has had all kinds of issues, financial issues, really tough time since they bought this. They bought it from Fox Sports Ohio, which is what it was when I was employed there, which was a wonderful place to work. I was very fortunate. Fox Sports was outstanding, but they sold it off. And I don't know much about Bally's because I haven't worked there. But I know that they've, covering the NBA, I cover a lot of NBA media, and I know that they've really had, and you guys may be aware of this too, they've really had a lot of financial problems. Diamond Sports is who actually owns Bally's. Bally's is just the sponsor of Diamond Sports. But anyway, we'll stick to Bally's and not go too deep. They've just had so many problems financially that this year looked like the Cavs games may not even be on there, or the Guardians. It was really an issue there for a little bit. So what they've done now is kind of, they came up with some money in the 11th hour to continue to broadcast Cavs games, which I was upset about that for the fans, because I thought maybe the Cavs fans would have a season. And it's not just the Cavs. They carry like 17, Bally's carries like 17 NBA teams, not to mention all the baseball. I'm sure hockey's in there too. But I felt bad for the fans that they were able to, save themselves for another year, because that meant none of those games would be on television or be viewable. And, it's bad enough during the regular season, but you're talking about a playoff game here when the Cavs are playing the Magic in game 2. So to me, it's just been really a nightmare for fans. They're caught in the middle of this. The fans are the lifeblood of everything that the teams do, and everything, frankly, that I do. And I'm in the media, and I do, television along with this stuff. And I can't imagine not being available, going on television and thinking, yeah, nobody's watching because they can't get it locally. And to me, it's just ridiculous that they can't work that out. Now, that said, I do have a little bit of news on that. The NBA intends to step in this offseason. Adam Silver, NBA commissioner, has talked about it, said we're very aware that our product is not available for a lot of fans, and we can't go through another year like that, because the ratings are suffering. Advertisers want their products in front of local fans. If, for instance, HoopsWire were to advertise during the Cavs game, and which, that's neither here nor there, because I don't know that I'll ever have that kind of money. But hopefully, if I did, I would want people to see it. And I think that that's a problem, that advertisers and people who are paying, funding these teams, whether it's salaries or other methods of or other revenue streams that they need, they're missing out on. And so it's hurting everybody. But most of all, the fans. You can't watch a game. That's ridiculous in the NBA playoffs. Now, this problem is going to go away, obviously, if the Cavs, when they're on ESPN or they have TNT, those games are not blacked out, I don't believe, regardless. So you could watch those games on YouTube TV. And like game 1 wasn't a problem, because that game was an ESPN game, even though it was also on Bally's, was also on ESPN. So it wasn't an issue. And I know that the league intends to fix that. How they're going to fix that, I don't know. What we've seen this year, guys, right, is Channel 43 broadcasting some Cavs games. And I think that that's a possibility, that they could go to Channel 43 as a future home for themselves, along with some other spots. There's also been a lot of talk that the NBA and Major League Baseball and probably the NHL are going to start taking over these local and regional broadcasts. And I think that that would be good for everybody involved, is that the leagues just run these as their own regional things, because, to Bally's, it's not as important to YouTube TV or Diamond Sports or whatever that these games get seen. They're more concerned about making money and squabbling with each other than they are about the fans. Otherwise they would have reached a deal already, right? They would have said, hey, the fans can't watch our games. Let's do something about this. So I know it's not going to help this season, and I don't know that it will impact any more Cavs games this playoffs. Like I said, I think the Cavs will get past Orlando. My guess is if they do get to the second round, the Cavs, they'll play the Celtics. Every one of those games is going to be on national TV, because it's Boston. The Celtics finished with the best record in the Eastern Conference. They're a traditional power. They'll be on national TV. So I don't think that's going to impact the Cavs the rest of the season. And probably, if I had to guess, never again. At least not until there's another contract squabble, because the NBA is going to step in, from everything I've heard. And Adam Silver has come out and made that clear that that's what they want to do. So anyway, show's not over yet, but I did promise a shorter show this week. I actually kind of went on my way to not get guests. I scheduled some guests coming up in the next few weeks, but I didn't schedule guests this week because I knew I wouldn't do a shorter show. And guess what? I don't know if I said this already. If I did, forgive me. But after this show, after I'm done here and we hit end on this show, I'm driving to John Sable's, who's been a guest on this show, channel 8, WJW. What is it called? Fox 8 News. That's where John Sable works. But he's also the co-host of the Cavaliers on the Break podcast. And I'll be driving over to his house. He's got everybody should see this man cave. I mean, it's just amazing the stuff he has in there. And I've talked with him about it on here. So anyway, I'm going over there to watch the Cavs game, maybe flip around with the NFL draft. I've heard that the NFL draft is a big deal, although I know the Browns don't have a first-round pick, right? So whatever. And then we're going to record a Cavs on the Break podcast. I'm going to write dribbles from from John's basement, which is a very difficult task. Trust me, because he's a guy who talks for a living. That's what he does. So when I'm trying to write, guess what he's doing? Yeah, and I'm usually like, John, I'm working here. How would you feel if I came in the studio and just started talking to you while you were working? And he said, I'd be all for that. That's fine. I'd just interview you or something. So there's no winning is what I'm trying to say with John Sable. It's only degrees of losing. But anyway, we will have a Cavs on the Break podcast tonight from John Sable's house. And I've been led to believe there'll be plenty of good food there. If anybody would like to join us, he doesn't know I'm inviting you right now. And I believe Chase Smith is going to join us, although he could not make it to the house. So we'll have to have our pizza party without him. But so I rambled on about Bally's. It doesn't seem like it's going to be a problem anymore. I know it's been awful because you pay for a service such as YouTube TV or Hulu TV, and you're a sports fan, and you got rid of cable, you cut the cord, and you can't watch the Cavs or the Guardians, or to me that's just, I get it for maybe a week or two where you're kind of, both sides are kind of negotiating, but 3 years, come on, time's up, and it's good to hear that the leagues are going to do something about that. From everything I've heard, I frankly, guys, don't even know if Bally Sports will exist next year. I really don't. They've had all kinds of financial issues. Anyway, so Ben from Parma sent me an email like 2 weeks ago. Well, it was right at the start of the playoffs. And he asked me, what are my favorite playoff memories involving the Cavs? And I'm sorry, Ben, I can't pronounce your last name. I can't. So we'll just call you Ben from Parma. And if you email, and don't worry about it, nobody can pronounce mine either. It seems like a lot of times I'll get calls and it's like, is this Sam Amico? And I'm like, sure it is. Yes. It depends how much money does Sam Amico owe. But anyway, so Ben asked me for some of my favorite playoff memories, and I thought that would be something somewhat decent to talk about because I did tell the story in earlier episodes. I know at least the Allen Iverson story, which was a great story, and I know I've had a couple other stories in there as well. So I would say, I'm just going off the top of my head, Ben, I didn't know show prep. Last night I actually talked to one of my friends in television, and he complained about how another person he knows did no show prep. And I thought, well, are you supposed to do that? Okay. So, but I just joined in. I was like, yes, you must prep for the show. You can't just go in there and wing it. Well, here I am today just winging it. And I'm thinking about playoff memories. I would say the first one to me that was kind of cool, or pretty cool, very cool, was the first year I was a full-time Cavs writer. They went to the NBA Finals. And I will say this, it was probably the worst NBA Finals I ever watched. That was 2007. And all I remember from that Cavs team, they obviously got swept by the Spurs. What a fantastic series that led into that against the Pistons, though, right? LeBron James had that amazing game in Detroit, where the Cavs won in overtime, or maybe it was double overtime, but at least went to overtime. And LeBron was just, at that point, I don't know that he's ever been better in one game than he was in that game in Detroit. And I was able to cover all that. And then I went to, it was my first finals. And, the great thing about being in the media when you go to the finals, and I don't think I have my bag here, it's around here somewhere, but you get like backpacks and stuff, and they all say NBA Finals. And I actually have the backpack. Obviously, I went and covered 4 finals after that. But that first one was really memorable because I was just starting out as a full-timer, and quite a bit younger, and had my backpack, my finals backpack, and just remember, like Larry Hughes, Daniel Gibson, who had a huge game in Detroit then, Sasha Pavlovich, and everything you need to know about that team. And I know Boobie Gibson, so I love him. This is not meant to be a shot at him, but I will say this. Sasha Pavlovich and Daniel Gibson were huge contributors on those playoff teams. Well, the very minute they hit free agency, nobody signed them. Not even the Cavs. Cavs didn't even re-sign Boobie Gibson. He was super marketable and a huge star. He even had his own TV show. And the Cavs opted not to re-sign him. And Sasha Pavlovich hit free agency. Nobody signed him. Nobody gave him a veteran deal, or a minimum deal. So the fact that LeBron James managed to get that team to the NBA Finals, to me, I think LeBron may have had better seasons, but that was really a season where it was just like, okay, this is like Michael Jordan carrying the 1986 Chicago Bulls. Even though those Bulls didn't get to the finals, they did a lot of really cool stuff. Or 87, I think it was. So yeah, I mean, that was a memory covering those playoffs. Really, the Cavs weren't expected to get to the finals. They certainly didn't, other than LeBron James and Zydrunas Ilgauskas, certainly didn't have the personnel to get to the finals, to be a finals team. But they managed to get there. And it was really cool because it was my first season covering the team. And of course, then, you think, well, they're going to go to the finals every year. As a rookie NBA writer, I'm just like, I better get used to going to the finals. Well, it didn't work out that way. They didn't get back for another 8 years. And for a stretch there, I became probably the losingest writer in the NBA. I think Jason Lloyd and I were both, Jason Lloyd now at The Athletic, we were both kind of tied, I think. We started covering the Cavs about the same time. And yeah, we had a lot of losses there right after LeBron left, and other writers would tease us and joke and say, you know, 2 biggest losers in the NBA, which we couldn't argue. We were. But another playoff memory, obviously, great run there, covering the 4 straight runs of the finals. One before that, one of my playoff memories was I wrote this big feature on Drew Gooden. You guys remember him, the former power forward for the Cavs. I believe he now does stuff for the Wizards, whether it's either television or radio, or he's like the in studio. I saw Drew when the Wizards played here just this past season. So he's doing something there. But he said one day, and this is a pretty cool story. I wrote a big feature about him. I don't remember what it was. And at that time, it was, I was writing for a bunch of different websites, including CBS Sports. But this one, it was on my own website, which was like my own personal NBA blog at the time, when blogs were still a thing. It was called ProBasketballNews.com, and I wrote something for that about Drew Gooden, and he thanked me later. He thanked me later, and you know what? He gave me the ultimate compliment. He said, "My mom printed it out and has it on her fridge." So trust me, there are a lot of times where NBA players don't like stuff that I write. But that was one of the times that I was just like, that's really cool, especially at that time. It's probably in my first or second season. And I remember I think they were playing the Celtics in that series. So that was really cool. I did a big story on Damon Jones too. Really, if you guys remember him, uh, and he's still around. I think he's you know assistant coach or something, G League coach, but he had been with the Cavs for a while. He'd been in the Cavs organization when LeBron came back. Damon Jones was working, I think, as a G League coach and just kind of hanging out and helping out. But anyway, I did a really big story on him. And if you go back, you don't have to read my story, but look at Damon Jones' story getting to the NBA. I mean, you're talking about a guy who played in like 8 different leagues, probably 3 or 4 different countries before he finally made it to the NBA. So I think those are 2 big ones. One of my other playoff memories, I will say this, probably not going to excite anybody, but I'll never forget it. And I may have brought this up before, but I'll tell it again because I doubt, unless you're my mother or poor Steve, the producer, you're watching every second. So if I told this before, forgive me, but I'll just go on with it anyway. One time when Shaq was with the Cavs, he was always great to deal with. If you see Shaq on TNT, same kind of guy, super laid back, personable, just a regular guy, except for the fact that, of course, he's 7'1" and looks like he could pick up a Mack truck and shoulder press it a few times. So one time I was interviewing Shaq, and there was probably 4 or 5 of us around him after a playoff game. Whoever the Cavs played in the first round that year, that was the year the Cavs won 66 games and lost to the Orlando Magic. That was the only other time, I believe, that they played the Magic in the playoffs. So it's payback time right now. But anyway, so one time we're all standing around Shaq, and he's talking and he's talking, and he puts his hand on my shoulders, just while he's talking, as people do. And it's easy for him. He was this high, and so his hand just fit perfectly. I was at the level where his hand was, and he just set it there gently, and I noticed that I starting to tip over, and I'm like, what's going on? And he's not pushing down; he's just resting his hand, and I'm starting to. So I had to like tap out. I had to tap Shaq's hand, and he looked at me and smiled, and then we got done talking, and he said, afterwards, he made fun of. He said, I was putting a little extra pressure there on the end, so don't feel too bad. He saw that I was starting to slice, so yeah, he started to push down. I thought that was great. I thought that was very nice of Shaq to try to push me to the ground. He gave me that amount of attention. So the other playoff memory that I have would have been one time. It was the first year TNT had just come to Cleveland for the first time because it was the playoffs. LeBron was in it. They were doing their show from Cleveland. That meant Ernie Johnson, Kenny Smith, Charles Barkley. Believe it or not, Steve Kerr, who was part of the broadcast team then, who went on to be despised by Cavs fans because he coached the Warriors. But at that time, he was part of the broadcast crew, and they were all in a little broadcast area before the game. They were actually a little side room across from the locker room. And it was an hour and a half, before they were even going to go on and do their show. So I went in there and I peeked my head in. And I thought, I'd like to do a story on Ernie Johnson, right? Because a lot of people didn't know his story. He had cancer shortly before that and overcame it and all that. So I thought I'd like to do a story. So I peeked my head in the room. There's Ernie, Steve Kerr, Charles Barkley, Kenny Smith. and may have been a couple other people in there. And I just said, "Hey, Ernie, could I interview you? Could I talk to you real quick?" And he was, yeah, absolutely. So he got up out of the seat and he started to come out. Charles Barkley, of course, says, "Wait a minute. Out of all the people in this room, you want to talk to him? You could interview any of us and you're talking to him?" And I laughed, and Ernie just shook his head and said, "It never ends. It never ends." A couple minutes later, I'm talking to Ernie outside in the hallway. Barkley comes out, stops dead in his tracks, looks down at me, and he said, "Where'd you get those shoes?" And I said, I don't know, just regular shoes. I have no idea. And he said, "Man, clearly they're not paying you enough if that's what you're walking around in." And then he just went on his merry way. And Ernie said, "See, told you, it never ends. You think it's an act on the air? It's not. That's just the way Charles Barkley is." So it's kind of funny, the things I remember about the playoffs. Very few of them are basketball related. I can tell you the few basketball related things I remember is the year in Orlando, or the year that the Cavs lost to Orlando. They just looked terrible, out of sorts. Stan Van Gundy, the Magic coach, had their number. He was running a similar offense to Golden State does now. And he had all those shooters. He had Dwight Howard, who obviously wasn't a shooter, but he was the anchor to everything that those Magic were doing. And then if you remember, I'm sure it was Rashard Lewis, Hedo Turkoglu. There was a couple of Michael Petrus and Jamal Tinsley was the point guard. And I think Dante Jones might have played for that Magic team, but everybody was making outside shots. The Cats could not stop them. And I just remember the one game where the Cavs had to have it, and they weren't playing well. And the game was tied, and LeBron hit a three at the buzzer to win it. And I mean, it was just absolute bedlam. And I thought at that point the Cavs are going to win the series because they're going to go to Orlando, get a game, and win the series. And not to be. They lost that series in 6 and just fell apart. But I do remember that shot. I remember everything about the Warriors Cavs series. I mean, the one thing that stuck with me was that game 6 in Cleveland that they needed to win in 2016 to go back to Golden State for game 7 in 2016. That game 6, I have never been at anything, rock concerts, sporting events, anything where the place just the whole time you could not hear the person sitting next to you. And it wasn't just because they were pumping in noise like the Cavs and other pro sports teams do. It's because it was just that intense and that loud. And I thought, you know what I thought before once that game was over? I thought, well, that's good. You know what? The Cavs were down 3-1 and they got it to a game 7. So good for them. It's a win. I didn't expect them to win game 7 at Golden State. I don't think the Warriors did either. So that championship season was something else. And that game 6 is something I'll never forget. And I'll tell you this, another reason I'll never forget it is because I asked Justin Bieber for a picture and he said no. So I was a little disappointed about that at that game, but he was very friendly. So other than that, and you know what? I didn't know it was Justin Bieber. He just happened to walk by me and somebody else told me. I'm like, oh, everybody loves Justin Bieber. I'm going to ask him for a picture. Surely a kid will say yes to a loser grown man like me, right? Ask him for his picture. Wrong. Jay Biebs wanted nothing to do with me, but that's okay. I still stuck with being a believer for years after. Now I bet he would probably beg people to get. I know he's still doing stuff, but nowadays he can't compete with Taylor Swift or Caitlin Clark or some of the other great well-known names of this show. But I do remember him politely saying no, and I was okay with that because I thought I probably wouldn't want my picture taken with that doofus either. So anyway, okay, well, I made it 30 minutes, and that was no problem at all. But the Cavs game is starting shortly. If you're watching this live, the NFL draft is, I think, starting shortly. I won't be watching. I'll be watching the Cavs. The Browns had a pick. You know what? Let me finish with this. My biggest issue with the drafts, whether it's NFL or NBA, and I think it's cool to like do mock drafts. I love to do mock drafts. I know some writers in our industry who do mock drafts hate them, but I like it. I think it's cool to predict, hey, would it be cool if they drafted this guy or that guy or filled this need some way? But it's just a bunch of hype. It's just a bunch of hype. That's all it is. The draft is 100% hype and very little results at the other end. I would be fine. I really would be fine if no draft ever were televised and all you had to do was say, because all I care about is probably two things. Who went top 3? And that's number 2. And who did my team take? You can tell me tomorrow. I don't need to watch them make a pick. That's not exciting. They found a way to sell it. It's big money. NFL, it's other than the Super Bowl, the draft. To me, it's like you're watching a guy. And am I yelling at clouds here again? I hope I'm not yelling at clouds. I think I kind of am. But I'm going to finish anyway. You're watching a guy walk up. Everybody's going to say the most positive thing, right? Nobody's going to say, well, they really blew it with that guy on the stage, right? Like, why did the Cleveland Browns pick you, Johnny Manziel? I mean, nobody's going to say that. It's all nothing but celebration, hype, and fluff. And he puts on a hat, and then he does the money signs. And I'm not angry about Johnny Manziel specifically. He just happens to be the best example that I can think of. So why would you do all those things? Fine, do them. Why watch it? You know what? I don't want to ruin it. I'm sure I'm going to John Sable's, and I'm going to be a good guest. He's going to want to turn on the draft, and I'll play along. But just not a fan of watching drafts, because to me it's just like first of all the insiders nowadays tweet out who they're going to pick long before they do it. In fact, we do that at hoopswire.com. So I'm happy to say, and I get people yelling at me like, you're spoiling it. It's like, what difference does it matter if I say who they're going to pick 10 seconds before they do it? I don't know. Some people don't like that. And I apologize to those of you who do not like it. But I can tell you this. I'm not going to stop because I like doing it. So anyway, with that in mind, thank you for those of you who did watch. And if you're catching us on YouTube, on my website, on Instagram, thank you for watching it there. Next week, I'll have a special guest, and I'm not going to announce it yet because I have like 2 or 3 in line. So I got to make cuts. I'm going to have tryouts over the weekend, and then whoever you see here next Thursday, you'll know has emerged as the tryout winner. And then we'll talk to you then next Thursday, and then every Thursday as long as you want after that, 6:00. So before I ramble on any longer, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you soon.